Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome back to episode 112 of the Snarp Fangle podcast. I'm your host, Jake Metzger, a somewhat moderate fan of the spectrum of LSM Patreon members. And my co-host tonight is a member who does not care a smidge about PlayStation, but he does love video games, and we love him anyways. And his name, ladies and gentlemen, David Reed.
Well, I wouldn't say I don't care a smidge about PlayStation.
You give a little smidge?
I give a little smidge.
A little smidge.
I mean, I grew up playing PS1 and PS2. I didn't own a PS1 and PS2. Richard did. But, I mean, I was over at his house all the time playing video games. So, yeah, I grew up playing PS1 and PS2. Also Sega Genesis.
Oh.
So, yeah.
What Sega Genesis games do you remember playing?
Let's see. The one I really played a lot of was, I believe it was Metal Slug.
Oh, heck yeah.
But it was like the weird version, where you could, or it wasn't Metal Slug, sorry. I think it was Contra 3.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Whereas like, it was like a
2D shooter game.
Yeah, it was a 2D shooter game. I believe it was Contra. I believe it was one of the Contra games. I think Contra 3, maybe it was Contra 2. But it was like the Genesis version was weird. And like instead of the normal Contra characters, it was like there was like 4 or 5 characters you could choose from. And one of them was like a beast man with a robot arm.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was weird. But yeah, I played a lot of that game on the Genesis.
Yeah, I'm showing my age here, but my first console I remember playing was, sorry to say this, but it was the N64. I'm a very small child in the world of things.
Well, I mean, also, I had a lot of diverse video game experience. Like, I played the Super Nintendo, when I was a small child, when it was, like, still, like, the current console. But when I actually... That was when it was my grandparents' Super Nintendo, and I played Super Mario World at their house. But when they actually gave it to me and it was mine, that was actually during the era of like the PS1 and N64.
Oh man, so you had the secondhand market like to take advantage of.
Yeah, we either found games at yard sales or I went to like the local video store and rented them.
Nice.
And then also during that time period, for a very short time period, I owned a Atari 2600.
Oh, okay.
And I even owned a copy of the infamous E.T.
You did? Really?
Yes.
I did not know this about you. After 100-something episodes, I finally get to reveal that David was responsible for the first crash of the gaming industry. Which we probably won't experience again.
Of course, that was well after.
Oh yeah, well after, yeah.
Well after the Atari 2600 could be in any way called a current console.
Yeah, well, I remember my parents had an Atari 2600 as well, and I remember they would pull it out every once in a while. We'd play I think I'd play Pitfall on it, and a couple other games, and I had a lot of fun, especially Pitfall. Pitfall is a lot of fun. And I remember when, during at least the PS2 Xbox era, GameCube era, we had that kind of revisit from Activision where we had Pitfall, the Great Expedition or whatever it was called, the 3D platformer game, which was basically like a Metroidvania, 3D Metroidvania basically. Super cool with different abilities and voice acting and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I grew up with. But the original Pitfall, it was fun. It's a cool game. I like that. Yeah. But I'm no connoisseur of the 2600 or anything like that.
I feel like what we need in the modern era is a new Pitfall game.
Yes.
But like Uncharted style.
Yeah.
Because, Pitfall Harry was basically, oh my God.
The wind's really kicking up out there. Should we shut the window?
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Okay. All right.
I'm sure it'll be fine.
Audience, if you hear it, no worries. Before we continue, David, let me just say, for comments, concerns, and how long your password is on your respective gaming platform, send them on over to snarpfanglepod@gmail.com. And what Atari 2600 games you played. Back to you,
if
David.
any.
If any. Back to you, David.
But yeah, I was just gonna say that, Pitfall Harry was basically the 8-bit version um
Uncharted.
of Indiana Jones.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So it would make a whole lot of sense to do kind of like, globe-trotting sort of adventure game in the style of Uncharted, but
That'd be
with
cool.
Pitfall Harry brought back for a new generation.
I can't remember if it's actually Atari or I think it is Activision straight up who still has the IP. Microsoft owns it. If
Yeah.
that's the kid. Come on, boys. Come on, Asha Sharma, get them pitches in.
Yeah,
We need a
that's
pitch
crazy.
for a new Pitfall Harry game.
That's crazy to think about that
Xbox Helix exclusive.
Activision, who is basically mostly known for Call of Duty at this point, uh, it was one of the original third-party game publishers,
And now they're under
All-
the big green machine.
all the way back to the beginning.
To the very beginning, basically, yeah. I think there was a version of Pong I played as well on the 2600, which was cool. Yeah. But nothing like Adventure or anything like that. They had a whole smorgasbord of games, and I think we would go through some of them. It was cool.
Yeah, Adventure. Now that's an interesting game. I never played it, but I've seen people playing it, and it just boggles my mind
too.
how you would have gotten into a game like that.
How, I know manuals were so more sophisticated than they are now, obviously. But my God, was there anything that would help you in that manual to see what you're doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
What?
Very
what
strange.
In the world? So, well, speaking of what in the world and very strange, let's get to our main topic today, David, which is the great hack of Colin Moriarty. Now, if you've clicked on this video or this podcast or downloaded it or are listening to it right now, you might not be familiar with Colin Moriarty, but if you are, well, bear with me. I'm going to give a brief description of what the scenario is today. So, last week, Colin Moriarty, famed PlayStation podcaster of the gaming landscape, actually host of all three of the #1 PlayStation podcasts at 3 separate times in history. First was Podcast Beyond at IGN. The second one, PS I Love You XOXO at Kinda Funny. And right now it is Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast over at Last Stand Media. Colin Moriarty, his PlayStation. He is a famed PlayStation player, writer. He's been in the industry for 20-something years, starting at IGN as a journalist, but before that, actually on the GameFAQs forums, making game guides, and so on and so forth. Has a famed career. He was canceled back, I believe, in 2017 or 16. Yeah, it was 2017. Left Kinda Funny, and then eventually formed Last Stand Media, now referred to as Last Stand Media, formerly called Colin's Last Stand. And he got hacked last week. And it's very interesting. I just need to be upfront. David, you know this about me.
Oh yes.
I'm a very avid fan of Last Stand Media, Colin himself. So I'm quite biased in this situation. So I'm not one of the haters, but I'm not one of the overly gooners of Colin, we'll say. But I'm almost there. I'm almost to that eshra.
I hope not.
No, I'm no gooner of Colin Moriarty. I just like the guy a lot.
Who would? I ask who. I ask who.
Who would want to goon over this Sicilian individual?
But I know that they must exist because it's the internet we're talking about.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
It's a fun community. I've been a part of the Patreon for, I think, 2020. So about 6 years or so. And I just really enjoyed his personality, his content. I actually first heard about him from Kinda Funny when I was exploring the podcasts and just going through different podcasts on iTunes and exploring there. And then I found Kinda Funny Games and the Game Over Greggy show. And I was like, oh, this guy's always the cynical dude on the podcast, which he is.
I have to interject one slight thing.
Yeah.
Not to make this political or anything. But
well, he's a very political person, let's be real.
From your as someone who's never really consumed any of his content, I've basically relied on your description of him and the things I could glean of you talking about him to form my opinion of this man. And so
not just right now, but over the years.
Yes, right. Yes, over the years. So due to your descriptions of him and him like being canceled over from Kind of Funny,
From a single tweet.
he seemed like kind of a based, maybe not like, far right person, but at least a center right person. And then I'm watching this clip of this podcast to get the scoop on the story about what we're going to talk about in this episode. And he makes a reference to late stage capitalism.
Yes, sir.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, he's a commie.
Oh man, no, not quite. Not quite. But there are little sprinkles here and there. I mean, if you want to know about communism, I mean, go to Chris. He's more of a socialist, really, but honestly. And that's kind of why I liked Last Stand Media in general, is it's very different opinions and personalities. Like Colin, you could describe as somewhat financially conservative, but socially liberal individual. Like, pro-choice, that kind of thing. With critiques of capitalism itself and
but yeah,
current,
he uses
the term
he used the term late stage capitalism, which is a hallmark of someone whose brain isn't functioning quite right. To me, at least.
Yeah. Understandable. And you got Chris, who's just a straight up socialist, doesn't believe. From the years, hundreds of hours I've listened to these people talk, he doesn't really believe people should have to drive places, even though he lives in California, which is such a moronic term, I would say.
Walkable cities, man.
Yeah, walkable cities, fool. And then you got Dustin, who's doesn't speak about his religion, but he is Christian, from what I understand. And people joke in the Discord how he's an avid Trump supporter, which he's never really mentioned Trump by name. Except he lives in Butler, Pennsylvania, which was where the city where the assassination attempt on him happened. Not Dustin, but Trump himself.
Yes.
So you have that connection. You got Western Virginia with Colin, New York/LA where Chris lives, and Dustin in Butler. But anyway, I just like the media network. It's cool. I'm not going to I don't want to go any more longer on it, but it's cool. But he is a notable person in the gaming landscape. He's been around for a long time. Lots of people have heard him throughout the years, and fans follow him and keep following him to today, supporting him in all kinds of ways. And we know how obsessive he is about trophies. He's a big PlayStation guy. So when you hear Colin's account got hacked, you're like, oh man, is he okay? Like, do we need a wellness check on the man? What's going on? So I'm going to kind of go read through the order of events. And the reason why we're talking about this is because the events that happened kind of reminded me of something, David, is of cybersecurity, which is why I went to school in the first place at college and, took one cybersecurity class, but it was mentioned throughout all the courses. And I always loved cybersecurity in general. Now, I'm no expert by far, but in my job, I do deal with a lot of IT support, helping people find accounts, recover accounts, etc. And I work with these people face to face. So experiencing this story and this kind of, not story, but this kind of event that happened in Colin's life here last week, I want to remind people that you're not quite always safe. Okay? Even if you don't click on those links on emails or you try your best practices. There are quite eccentric people out there that will get your information some way or another if you're not careful, and even if you're careful. So let's go through it. So the great hack of Colin Moriarty. Here are the order of events. So Colin gets messaged on the Last Stand Media Patreon saying, in quotes, "Colin, I'm warning you. They have your information. They are going to try and take your account today." This was Monday. Monday the 18th of May, 2026. During a stream on their YouTube page, his account gets hacked live. He gets a flood of emails and then an email saying his two-factor authentication was turned off, meaning the jig is up. He searches for a number and gets a support number from online for Sony support. After this, with no success, he reaches out to his connection. So he gets on the phone, he talks to support, and they can't really do anything for him. But after this, he says, okay, I need to get my connections because it's only a matter, like the longer this goes on, the more my account is like jeopardized because as we'll go through this there, and I'll go and explain it, there are certain things that hackers can do to your account to get it banned permanently. And we'll go through that.
Or they just sell it to somebody.
Yeah, they can. So there's a lot of things that goes through this. All right. So the next thing here. So two things happen next. Colin then emails a high-ranking PR person who remains nameless. And then he calls Greg Miller, his former friend and business partner over at Kind of Funny. Greg reaches out to somebody. Nothing happens from this branch out, but Greg does make an effort to reach somebody out at Sony. Next, the PR person got back to Colin, and she got in touch with him, got him in touch with a security, somebody in San Mateo that's part of like security for Sony or PlayStation, something like that. Colin gets a phone call from the same Sony number from earlier. So this was the tech support number that he called. So he gets a call and he answers it. After the call, an hour passes by since the hack, basically at this point. The caller lets Colin know this was a follow-up to the earlier conversation from the support number, and he's asking similar questions to before. Tells him that they could get it solved in about 3 weeks. Colin answers all the questions, including giving him the original email address to the account, and gives the guy the serial numbers of both of the PS5s in the house. No serious information, just similar questions. Then Colin tweets a status update after this happens. This is where I find out this is happening. I think I was at work and I checked Twitter and I'm like, oh shoot, he's getting hacked. What the heck? And then we go on and so go for it from here. The connection in quotes. So this is somebody that Colin and Dustin have been talking to. Behind the scenes, I'm assuming they don't reveal who it is, obviously, but from their description, I think it's either a Patreon member who works in IT or at Sony, or somebody at Sony that has been talking to them during this time since they got that message that morning. Hey, they have your account information. The connection, apparently they've been communicating with this person the last few months. Anyway, the connection tells Colin that last phone number that he was giving that information to was indeed the hacker. Man, youch. Next, Colin gets on the phone with the connection. So the guy that was telling him this, and the guy tells Colin that they spoofed the number. They have the same questions from the support number because these guys are professionals. They know what they're doing. And the call was mainly to build trust, not to kind of fish information, although that was done. Tells him anyone who calls him to always ask for a reference number. An hour later, Colin gets another phone call, a California number, American accent, helpful guy from assumedly PSN management. This person remains anonymous. This is the guy that the PR person connected Colin with. Colin tells them about the spoof call and gets a reference number from the guy. We're good. No name was given for this caller. The caller locks everyone out of Colin's account and locks the account down. Once this happens, Colin starts getting multiple calls from the 1-800 number, the 1-800 Sony number the hacker used. The hacker realizes he's lost the account, leaving multiple voicemails on Colin's phone. The hacker then texts Colin and says, I'll give you the account back. And then the caller who's helping Colin at this moment says that he locked the account, added it, and then he added the new email address Colin provided. And then he said that since the hacker, changed so much on the account, it might take several hours for the email to go through for Colin to access his account and get back in. Colin doesn't get the email, then calls again. The guy sends the email over again. This time it goes through, and he eventually gets the account back after several hours. Once the account got reset and the system sent the email. So let's stop here for a second. You listen to a big majority of that. It's basically
I listened to that whole story.
That whole story, basically. So
yeah.
After hearing about this, David, what was like your takeaway from listening to this late stage capitalism viewing Colin individual?
It was just like, I was just kind of blown away that like such a large company would have such an easy vulnerability to exploit. And it's not really surprising, but it's something I never really considered.
Yeah.
But now that, this information is like, it's happened before our very eyes, it's like, yeah, of course these vulnerabilities would be exploited by unscrupulous people. But it's just like, I guess the part that just really impacted me the most was just how little Sony seems to care about this.
Mm,
How like, Colin got his account back because of his close connections to Sony,
mm,
and that's the only reason he did.
yeah, pretty
Whereas
much.
he later on in the podcast he goes on to talk about two guys who were famous trophy hunters
Mm,
from back in the day having their accounts stolen and Sony's and sold on the black market basically. And Sony's response to those people was, "Yeah, sorry, the account's already in their possession. We can't do anything about it." Which story right here proves that they absolutely can do something about it
yeah,
if they
yeah.
could be bothered to.
Yeah, something that stood out to me, I was kind of like, when I heard about it happening that week, I was like, as a fan, I'm like, holy crap, what's going on? And then I'm like hours later, I get the tweet update from him saying, oh, I got my account back. And I'm like, what the heck? And then because Colin has such an obsessive personality, this was like his crusade this whole last week, trying to figure out what the heck's going on, doing research. He's a journalist by trade, so he's like researching, contacting people, different connections, trying to kind of piece together what's going on and why this happened. And it's really interesting. The biggest thing for me, and we'll get into it here, but the biggest thing for me is all the hacker had to work with was a publicly tweeted out transaction, like credit card statement from Colin trying to like dunk on somebody on Twitter. Take that with what you will, but he did that. And usually from any kind of statement like that, unless like make sure you cover all your numbers, and which he did, but the dates and the time of the purchases is what the hacker had, as well as the name of his email address. And that's literally all he needed to access this vulnerability in PSN's network. When Colin said about the hacker and him actually finding out he was talking to it, my heart like sank when I was listening to this. I'm like, whoa, dude. Oh no. And dude, the guy has the serial numbers. Like, I'm not saying you can't do anything with that, but you could do something with that. Like if you could call Sony, hey, say, hey, like for example, if you're a hacker, you have the serial numbers of somebody else's console. You could say, and you know the name and the email address. You could say, hey, this is so and so. This is my profile. This is my number on the profile. I'm calling from like, say, my brother's phone or whatever. And here's my serial numbers. Like you have all the correct information. You could potentially, if you bug Sony enough, maybe get free PSN code or get a replacement for your console. Who knows? You could claim whatever you want on the phone if you're the hacker and make this work, and you can spoof stuff and all that kind of thing. So there's so much fascination I have with social engineering and the fact that it just works, and people are dumb and too trusting at times. And like I've worked in the education system in the past, and the fact that many people are so trusting as they are, especially here in California, really bugs me. Really bugs me, David, just in general. Because everybody in California is, in quotes, nice to everybody, which is not the reality. But it's more like, hey, get away from me, and the fastest way to do that is to be nice to you. But anyway, that aside, I think it's just interesting how like nefarious this is. And I think the biggest takeaway for me is this is like the most like public like showing of somebody getting duped, but not only getting duped, but a success story as well. Like, hey, this crappy thing happened to you, but oh my God, it happened. So wait, there's a fix for this. And Colin goes on and explains there's an internal security dashboard inside PlayStation that they use called Parsec, not the streaming application. You can open source streaming application, but Parsec, which is their internal security dashboard kind of thing. Their account management, basically. So it's like kind of like Windows user account controls.
It's also a measure of interstellar distance.
There you go. Exactly. That goes back to our Vulcan and Volcane discussion from before.
Yeah, which makes it all the more interesting when Han Solo talks about making the Kessel run in a certain number of parsecs, and most people interpret that as a time thing, but parsec is actually a measure of distance.
Yeah. Yeah. David, thank you for that educational Star
I don't
Wars
know why I had to throw
lore.
that out in there, but it just, I felt it needed to be inserted into the discussion.
Well, let's continue on. I have some notes here from kind of what they were telling and going through the story in general. Some things to note. Colin never got fish. That's number one. He never clicked on any links. This is all from him. He never gave his password to anyone else. His email address was known to the public internet. So there's that. And was one time where he posted, yeah, I already told a screenshot of PSN transaction, a credit card statement. But this is non-identifiable information without like your account codes and stuff like that. Like if you just have a receipt from Target, for example, there's nothing much you can do with that except for maybe like if you know your stuff, maybe you can manipulate your way through it. But you shouldn't be able to get access to your Target account with a receipt, right? It's not possible. But it was possible with this minuscule amount of information. All right, let's go through the reasons for the hack. All these professional hackers need to do, like we've already mentioned, is to get access to your email and a mundane piece of information like the date of a purchase. And then why even hack an account? So I know like that might sound dumb, but some people out there who aren't familiar with the gaming industry, this is why. There are a few reasons. One of them is there's quite a black market for boosted accounts with lots of buyers. The main reason that people hack accounts is that and then sell them is accounts that have low character names. And this is from Colin's own research. Like say you have someone who, created their PSN at the very beginning and they got the name Rock or Ocean or Skywalker for Star Wars. And just those simple names, or even like a John or a Jeremy or a Billy, or even ABC or 123, those accounts are incredibly valuable. And if hackers can find them and find what country they're in and track them down that way, those are selling for, I don't know how much, but potentially thousands upon thousands of dollars. And who's buying them? I don't know. Some Saudi prince or some people who just are into that, I guess. Another reason I would say people would buy an account on the black market is accounts tied to, let's say, notable people, like people in the government or celebrities, people with power, people in the gaming industry, hacking them also to troll and to mess with that individual. Now, who are the targets, David? Through some research and digging by Colin, he found out that the prominent people in the games industry. Okay, let me restart. Through research done by Colin, he found out that there are prominent people in the games industry that got their accounts boosted and they never said anything about it. Like they kept it quiet. The names weren't mentioned to keep the anonymity of the people. Some got their accounts back months later through PlayStation support. And of course, their accounts were compromised. As of right now, like you mentioned before, David, the number 1 and 2 trophy hunters in the world got their PSN accounts hacked, and they have been lost for years now. A widely known thing online, it is widely known. Okay, so there was a thing where they contacted Sony. They've tried multiple times to recover their accounts, but Sony refuses to help them because they say there's nothing they can do for them. So there's also a thing this is another interesting thing that I found in this crusade that Colin went on. But dead man switches. Did you get that far, David?
Yeah.
Dude, there are people out there, like if you say they get access to David's PSN account, which I know he has one, right? And they get access to your account, David. Like say for example, theoretically, I get access to your account. And
So you're basically setting up a scenario in which you drink my milkshake.
Exactly. Yes. All the way from over here. But anyway, so I get access to your account. I have other dummy accounts that I have, right? So I use your account to send the F slur and the N word to those regular accounts that I have, right?
I felt pain in my soul that
I know, because you already have 100 messages of just those words already. So it was like, why hasn't this guy been banned already? So anyway, I report those messages I send to those accounts, right? And then your account, boom, PlayStation's like, oh, that's a no word, and your account's banned. Like, oh, okay, what? You could do that. and getting it unbanned is crazy difficult. There's people in the call center that can't even touch that kind of stuff. Another thing that they would do to ban an account is this is also really stupid, and I don't know why this happens, but this is the way they do it. They purchase very cheap and simple games that are basically for trophy hunters, where there's a $1 game that's like Get the Duck, and you purchase it, you download it, you move the duck across the stream, boom, you get a platinum trophy. Like, this is a way for people to collect kind of stupid dummy platinums to build and inflate their trophy library. It's stupid, I get it. It's a very niche thing. That's the reason people make those games, for those people who hunt trophies. But it's kind of stupid. It kind of takes away the hunt for trophies, in quotes. It's just to inflate your numbers. What hackers do is they purchase these games, and these games are like these are short games, minutes to complete to get the platinum trophy, maybe seconds. Even opening the game in some of these titles gets you the platinum trophy. So what they'll do is they have a list of these games. They purchase them on that account. They go through one by one and platinum trophy. Okay, X out, go to the next game. Boom, platinum trophy. Okay, X out, go to the next game. Boom, platinum trophy. Platinum trophy, platinum trophy, platinum trophy. It pings the servers to Sony in this succession of order in this short amount of time. It detects it as like, I don't know what it detects it, but it detects it as malicious intent. And that's another way you can get your account banned. Very, very interesting. I don't know if you want to pick at any of that, David, but
all I can say is that if I wasn't already a student of human nature, this would bewilder and confuse me to the utmost. But knowing how humans are and how they behave and how they think, it's just like, of course people would do something this retarded.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, that's the biggest thing with all this is the people who are, professional red hat hackers or what have you, who are going through and stealing accounts, making a profit, doing all this stuff. Can't you go and do something else with your life if you have this much talent and social, like, suave to convince people who you like to trick them and manipulate them and cause them pain? Like, can't you go do something better with your life? Like, you would make an amazing, like, white hat hacker for something. You know how much those guys make? Finding vulnerabilities and different things. They make a lot of money from different governments, dude. Just it boggles the mind. But some people are just trolls and are just take so much joy in causing pain to people. It's disgusting. All right, next up here, further into the hack. The manager that was on the phone with Colin unbanned his account, then informed Colin that his account has flags in the system, and no changes can be made on his account internally unless a person is a manager, for example. Even the people at the call center that Colin called earlier in the day, their managers over there, like say in Indonesia, wouldn't be able to even attempt to manage that account. They wouldn't have access. Serial numbers. I've already been over this, so I'm going to skip it. Patreon members test the theory. This is also really dope. Through information provided by Dustin Furman, Sacred Symbols executive producer, him and Colin's wife have corresponded with members of the Patreon who are IT and SecOps people, security ops. They have tested and successfully gotten access to their own accounts with this information that we know of how to access the accounts. But they also not only got access to their own, but tested it on family members' accounts in certain scenarios and with their consent, obviously, and were successful. Colin and the crew have relayed this to Sony. So even IT guys in the field are testing this out, and they say, yeah, this works. This is actually pretty easy. This is a huge vulnerability in the Sony systems. Your password doesn't matter. This is the next part I want to get to. With this method, the hackers don't need access to your password, your two-factor, or even your passkey. Like, they have those things like, oh, David, I don't know the names of them. It's been a long time since I've seen an ad for anything like that on YouTube, but like, not BitLocker, but something like passkey, where it's your biometrics on your phone and you can use that to access all your accounts, for example. I personally have never trusted those because I don't like biometrics in general. I don't really like them. I don't like my phone scanning my face or my fingerprint. I just don't like that. That's personal choice. Also, I don't think it's a very good idea, and this also just helps my like fear of that.
Yeah, I don't know. I've used that, um, but only for stuff where I'm only for stuff where I'm paying for something um through Apple or through something that comes from like is vetted by the App Store kind of a
Yeah.
thing. And the only reason why I use it is because iPhones, by virtue of no longer having the home button where they can scan your fingerprint, like that's how you unlock your phone is with your
Mm.
face.
Yeah, you got that
So
Face ID.
yeah, um so yeah, already having that on my phone for things that I'm like, because when you pay for something on an Apple app, like it's through the App Store specifically. Like, um, if you have like a subscription for like a service that's just on a website, um, but you subscribe to it through the App Store, it's actually a different subscription than if you had gone to their website and
Oh,
set up a subscription.
okay.
So yeah,
Interesting.
so Apple is very controlling and very privacy centric when it comes to these sorts of things.
Yeah, the walled garden, we'll
Yeah,
say.
so um, yeah, I've definitely used it for stuff on the App Store where I have a certain degree of confidence that it's all that data is being kept separate from the vast untamed wilderness of the World Wide Web. But yeah, for as far as things on just like websites and like stuff like that, like I haven't even enabled biometrics on my laptop at all.
Good man. Good man.
So, I would
Yeah.
never do that.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I never wanted to do that is because I always heard stories of like also being insecurity. Like I've heard stories of and read articles of people like the government forcing people to access their phones with their fingerprint. Like if there's like if you have access to their face and a fingerprint, you can unlock their phone and you don't I don't know if you need consent. I don't think the government would. But say you're a prisoner and they accuse you of something, sure, they can just grab your finger and do that. If they have a password or a PIN, that's different. You have to willingly give up that information that's in your mind. So that's how I kind of reasoned it. But again, we're in a world where privacy is kind of negated at this point. All these corporations know who you are, track you. If you have a Facebook account or a Google account, you're pretty much spied on constantly.
Yeah,
There's kind of no privacy anymore.
it's pretty difficult to be truly privacy focused unless you basically just throw away your mobile phone and like only access the internet through like Tor browsers or whatever. And even then, there's still some your data's probably floating around there somewhere. Even then,
Yeah, like there's plenty of stories you can go look up, but for those who aren't savvy out there listening to this, there's stories of people where Facebook has the enough information on them in their home that they know when they go to the bathroom. Not just when they're looking at Facebook on the toilet, but they know geometrically in their house where they are in their house. There's also technology that's been more recently reported where you can use Wi-Fi signals from your router to scan in the home and to pinpoint people through walls where they're
yeah,
at. So it's that level of, and I'm not trying to scare people, but you should be aware of these things regardless. You're like, you should be scared. No, you should be aware, I think, of these things and be more concerned on your own through your own judgment.
yeah, and that's the thing too is like, you know, we we talk about concepts like the surveillance state, the Orwellian surveillance state, as if it's some sort of like future possibility that we're hoping not to get to. But the truth of the matter is, we already live in an Orwellian surveillance state.
Yeah,
And
basically.
it's not to, like, the purpose of stating that is, like you said, it's not to induce panic, but it's just for people to think realistically about their situation and make better and more informed choices.
Most definitely, because this is the world we live in. And some governments are more benevolent in that case. They still have your information, but some of them don't act upon it. You have the European Union, you have the UN, you have the United Nations. They are very bullish about privacy laws, in quotes, like protecting the people, when in reality, they just want access from these companies to everything so that they can get more info on the people, on their constituents, on the people who live in their country, so that they have more control. And
Yeah.
the US government is no stranger to this either. I mean, I don't care what administration, whether it be Biden or Trump, man, there's some people in this government, regardless of administration. Man, I bet you, man, there's some folks at FBI and CIA that can find you in a click and a snap.
Yeah, I mean, let's be real here. The Patriot Act
Yep.
is still law in the United States.
And it was even amplified, I think, I think it was given more provision during, I want to say Obama's second term or Trump's first term. One or two of those. But yeah, it's like, I mean, regardless, like nobody's a stranger for government surveillance.
Yeah, and I did talk briefly earlier about Apple being more privacy focused than a lot of companies and governments are. But even then,
Yeah.
it's like you got to know that they're not doing it because they have your best interests at heart.
No, yeah, no, no.
They're
No.
doing it for very selfish reasons.
Yep.
And so you should treat their commitment to privacy with a degree of suspicion.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of something I was listening to 10, 12 years ago at this point, where it was different kind of tech podcasts, and they were talking about privacy, de-Googling yourself, freedom of information requests, that kind of thing, protecting yourself from these giant corporations that are tech corporations that are collecting your data, as well as protecting yourself from the government and doing everything you can to, not sign in with Google, to, have a custom firmware on your browser or on your router so that nothing can access it, that kind of thing, like high level stuff, like to the ends of the earth to kind of protect your privacy. And that's all very feasible today. There's actually a lot of open source stuff and a lot of things that you can do to kind of decouple yourself from like your subscription services. You can make a home media server. You can make something on your router. You can make your own router. There's a lot of things you can do to kind of protect and shelter yourself from some of this stuff and data collectors and all that kind of thing. But even if you visit a website, even if you clear your cookies, if you visit that website again, they're still going to enable something to track you and sell that information.
Yeah, so one thing too with the whole de-Googling thing is like some of the de-Googling stuff is not going to be feasible for the average person.
Exactly.
And I would not consider that de-Googling really is like a necessary thing that most people even need to do. Like I still use Gmail.
Yeah.
I'm a bougie bitch and I pay $50 a year for a Mac specific Gmail client app because I like the way it handles things.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. It's the biggest thing I have issue with the security and IT community is, well, you can do this and you can do that, blah, 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 blah. It's like, you can, but is it realistic? Does it work for the user? And can the user actually implement it correctly? Yeah, you can build your own router in quotes, but that's way beyond even me. Like, yeah. I don't think I would even want to do that.
Yeah, I would say that in like, as far as like stuff for the average person, mostly the biggest thing you can do is really just be aware and make choices with that awareness in mind, like knowing that if you sign up for a free service, like the product is actually you.
Mm-hmm.
You are the product. And you're essentially selling yourself to whatever company is providing this service. So it's like in you're selling your data essentially.
Yeah.
So like you don't have to de-Google yourself. You don't have to be obsessive about this. But, just it's one of those things that as you engage with internet services in the modern world, it's just a thing to be aware of.
Yeah. And there's kind of this push, at least in the algorithm I experience on YouTube, where people are saying, oh, well, I got a dumb phone, so I can kind of not be on Facebook on my phone. There's also accounts I follow that are like, hey, discipline yourself with your screen time, blah, blah, blah. But each person makes your own choice. Figure out what works for you. And like, for example, I have a very specific example of this where I kind of enabled myself less on my phone. I deleted Twitter, which, obviously I'm like, yeah, I would get less screen time on it. But because I deleted Twitter, I didn't have a desire to go on Facebook or Instagram because I'm like, I just don't want to. Like, I'd rather, if I don't want to go on Twitter, I don't want to go on any of them, Like, that's just how my brain worked, or at least theorized it. Also, right after I deleted Twitter, most of the time on my phone was spent on eBay, which is not a good idea. So my endless scrolling was replaced with eBay endless scrolling, which as I'm looking for computer parts, putting a server together. Oh man, this is not a good idea. I'm going to be spending money versus losing my sanity on Twitter. I don't know. Maybe it's a good switch out. Anyway, but do what's like best for you. And like, this is the biggest thing you and me have talked about, David, on this podcast is intentionality with media consumption. And this people have kind of taken it now, at least in 2026, to like be, hey, I do want to de-Google myself to a certain extent. Like, I want to stop paying for Netflix, so I'm going to digitize my media library. And we've talked about this endlessly. So anyway, that's just some ways you can like discipline yourself and go into that. But let's go back to here. So since the hack, these are like Colin's goals he stated on the podcast there. And this whole segment on the whole podcast is 5 hours long. And this one segment's like, like 2 hours. So it's a huge like discussion that they go into about it. But these are 2 goals that he wants to do. Convincing Sony, number 1, to convince Sony to stop this from happening. This is my write-up here. Sony honestly has shown time and time again they don't care. The 2 top prior mentioned trophy hunters still cannot access their accounts, and it's been years at this point. They have gotten 0 support from Sony, even though it is possible internally, proved by Colin's situation. Number 2, Colin said, let's get these people their accounts back. And this is my write-up. The main reason the hackers do this is just to mess with you, to troll, take away your account, to make you suffer, because people are cruel. So let's think about this, because from Sony's perspective, this is like what they're doing. As Sony, an account is boosted from one of your customers. Okay. Then it is sold on the black market and logged in and used by someone else. So it's over for that user. Another user is using it. Not the original user. It is then used for years afterward by someone else. You as Sony are aware of this. You don't even shut it down. The behavior they show, as well as giving this user power over a once happy customer. By doing this, Sony creates a customer who loses their trust with Sony and then stops giving the money. They lose the customer. Another thing I wanted to kind of cover here is, what if that customer then migrates to another platform and tells their friends and family to never associate with Sony? Hey, do not buy Sony products. They had a bad experience with them. They have terrible customer support. I lost hundreds of games on my account. They tell them not to deal or purchase with anything Sony, any hardware. Tells them to buy a PC instead, or God forbid, an Xbox. What if that customer buys thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars of games? What if they've been there since the PS3 days when PSN first started? And they've bought, like I said, hundreds, if not thousands of dollars worth of games and in-game items. I mean, there's people out here spending like thousands of dollars over the years, over the course of like 10 years on like Fortnite, Rocket League, that kind of stuff. All that is just gone. It's just gone. Now with Epic, you have your own account with same thing with Rocket League. But say you have another live service game and it's just through your PSN. That's gone. And also the way Fortnite works, if you buy V-Bucks, this is just a post Fortnite player like myself. If you buy V-Bucks on a platform, they can transfer between platform, but like I think 50%. Like if I buy 800 V-Bucks on PC, 400 will translate to PS4, 4 or 5 or whatever I'm playing it on. So say I buy it on PSN. Like, oh man, I'm gonna get me that $20 V-Bucks skin. Oh, I can't wait. Vegeta is on the store, David. And I buy Vegeta. Woohoo! And then it's gone. Crap. Okay. The last thing I have here is this. Not many other companies do this. Amazon? No worries. We'll make so much money. We'll just give you the item for free. We'll send it to you. We'll just take it on the chin. Xbox? We have lots of recovery options, and we will track down your account. And it might take several days or maybe a week, but we are on it. And they do mostly deliver. I've had many people, and as much as I hate Microsoft, David, I can't believe I'm saying something good about the recovery options. As much as I hate them and hate Windows 11, they're pretty good about, at least from what I've read and have experienced with helping people out, getting their issues resolved from their tech support. Even if it's 3 weeks, they will figure it out. They'll put you in a queue and do it. That's what Sony was doing with Colin. But at the point of them getting back to him, say the 3 weeks, the account was going to be gone anyway. And what about Valve, David? I mean, you can sneeze after contacting them, and then they just recover your account minutes later. Oh yeah, we got it. Oh yeah, it was being logged into Argentina like 10 minutes ago. We got you. And then it's just not like, there's time and time again I've read on forums and articles about people losing their Steam account, contacting Valve literally like the next day or within hours of contacting them, they get the account back. It's crazy. And Sony can't even do this? They're just throwing their customers away?
And they can, they just won't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like,
this whole thing really kind of like I forgot what expression I was going to use, but yeah, this whole thing really just kind of shows that like it was not due to some kind of lack of ability on their part, because due to Colin Moriarty's connections with Sony and getting hooked up with the right person who worked at PSN, he got his account back no problem within hours.
Which is crazy. Like, and he goes over this in the podcast. He's like, I'm not trying to do this like high and mighty thing. I'm just letting people know like the story and how I felt that fear of like, oh my God, I almost lost everything. Like the co-hosts on the podcast were joking. Yeah, we almost didn't have a secret symbols this week, depending on how the week went. Or Colin would have been gone. And they've been joking that this other PlayStation fanatic called Rad Radic would, like, he's been on their content and before, but they said, Colin's joked like, hey, if I die, I mean, probably it's Rad Radic. And then this week they're like, we almost had to call Rad. We almost had to get Radic in here. Because Colin even said, I think on the show, I probably would have just bought a really expensive PC. I would have paid like the premium at this point just so I can start something. Because he said he wouldn't start another account, which I don't believe him. I think he would probably start another PSN, knowing him.
I mean,
who knows?
It would be like, it would be really tough if you've invested years and years and years into your PSN account.
20 years at this point.
And you've been worked with Sony so closely for all this time. And if it had truly been like just gone and they couldn't do anything about it, I mean, it's difficult to say what someone would do in that situation.
Or what they would do with themselves, David.
Yeah.
I mean, some people, they might make some drastic choices, you know. Anyway, Colin's joked about that before. Like, I don't know if I'd be alive. No, I'm joking. But anyway, so that's basically what happened. I do kind of have these supplemental topics, David, I want to talk to you with and see what you think about this. And the first one up is outsourcing tech support to the third world. Again, this could be controversial, but it's just the reality of the situation. I think there's a discussion to be made. There are people out there who have knowledge to do this in, third world countries where we have a lot of our call centers, for example. Amazon is one of them. I mean, pretty much every company outsources this stuff to other countries. And some of these people, they don't get paid a lot. American money is worth a lot in their country. And so it's very feasible that with this knowledge and with access to some security frames in some of these companies, a hacker could just message a dude at the call center, say, hey, you want $100, $500, and I give me this information on this person on this account, and I'll just Venmo it, not Venmo, but I'll Cash App it to you. And then sure enough, that's worth way like $300, $500. Dude, you know how much that's worth in Indonesia, like all these countries, like it is worth a massive amount of money. You could live off that for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean that's basically what forced Twitter to change how they paid out creators, because people in India were taking advantage of the fact that every creator was getting the same US dollar amount, regardless of what that US dollar was actually worth in their home country. And they were just basically gaming the system, just posting post after post after post, having their friends and their family and their acquaintances start accounts
and retweet those accounts,
yeah,
and
to
like
just
those.
basically mass retweet, mass engage with their posts and drive up their, just basically drive up their engagement to the point where they get the max payout because it's worth a lot.
Oh yeah.
In India. And also too, it's like, I mean, I don't want to make this a thing about disparaging Indians, because like I truly don't hate them.
No.
But their culture is different.
Yeah, that's correct.
Their culture is different. They don't have the same kind of thing
I think their culture morally is different as well. I think
that's what I mean.
Yeah,
they don't really think about honesty the same way that we do,
and this is stereotypically, but stereotypes, as we know.
But it's also very, like, culture is one of those things that it's a very powerful motivator, and it's most often entirely invisible to those who are in the culture. It's why you hear white liberals say all the time that white people have no culture. And the only reason why they say that is because the culture that they have is mostly invisible to them, and because of the connected world that they live in, we're inundated with this global information. We have so much knowledge about how people halfway across the world live, and it seems so exotic and exciting, and we can identify elements of what their culture is because we're looking at it from the outside in, and then we compare that to our lives where our culture is completely invisible to us because it's just what we've always known, how we've always lived, and it seems like there's, we have less of it. But I mean, people are people wherever you go, and in much the same way that our culture is invisible to us, the culture of Southern Asia is very much invisible to the people who are indigenous there.
Yeah.
So you have certain things like the concept of honor, or I think it's Izat it's called Izat over there. And it's basically like they prize honor and standing in the community um, above all else. But how you get that, um, they don't practice the same kind of care and scruples as we do over here necessarily. Like, for example, somebody might do something that will gain them a lot of attention and status without concern for the actual morality of the act itself. Whereas over here, I mean, you have unscrupulous people over here, obviously, but by and large, a lot of unscrupulous behavior that we see um, engaged in by other cultures is shocking to us because we're not used to unscrupulous behavior being normalized in that way,
Mm.
because it's part of our culture to be very, very careful um, in how we do something, not just the ends don't justify the means for us. But in a lot of other cultures, South Asia included, the ends basically do justify the means. And so if they can get a lot of money and a lot of status from that money, uh, they don't really care how they got it.
Mm. Yeah, it's also kind of I mean, speaking about the culture over here, specifically in California, there's a massive homeless population, and that's all over the U.S. and around the world, obviously. But California specifically, the state has done a horrible job managing this crisis, and it's been a crisis for so ever long. And working in the education system before, in a computer lab specifically, I've had plenty of people come in and sign up for classes and, get the financial aid money and run, obviously, right? But there's actually one scenario where this made me, you talking about this kind of reminded me of it, where I had a guy I've worked with before. Um, you could tell drugs really just completely ruined his brain, life, all of it. And that's no stranger from a lot of people I've worked with, especially specifically homeless people in general. But, and I'm not saying these are all bad people. There's been plenty of people that I've helped who are good people who actually have gotten out of homelessness at this point just by picking themselves up and working incredibly hard, suffering through it, but being able to do that. But then there's people that just keep revisiting their old man and just the old drugs and just keep going back to that. And the scenario I wanted to bring up here was there's a guy I worked with, and he had this was the last time I think I worked with him 2 times before this, and then the last time he came in, he had the giant black garbage bag. I'm like, oh God, what do you got in there, buddy? But anyway, he sits down. I'm really busy with some other folks, and he doesn't know how to use the computer very well. And he wanted me to help him out finding his account. And he had like 6 different, Obama phones that he just put on the desk. And I finally got to him and I said, oh, hey, what do you need help with, man? And then he explained the situation, and then he just handed me these phones. He's like, I don't know which one's the right number. And I was like, well, okay, well, I don't know if I can be much help here. As I started helping, I'm like, this is too much. I'm going to drop this. I'm not going to help this guy because this is ridiculous. And I don't do that for really anybody, but I could tell he was being really weird and, who knows what he was on. And I started helping him with one phone and didn't work, head to the next. And all of them were either almost dead or broken or cracked. And I just couldn't really do much for the guy. And he didn't know how to use a computer really, so he couldn't do anything on his own. And so I'm like, well, sorry, pal, but I just can't help you. And then he like complained to me and like was kind of, being really aggressive. And I said, look, I'm not going to do this, and you can do it yourself. And as I got up, and this was a whole thing I had to make a write up and send it out into the college. But as I got up, he got up as well. And this dude's like 6'5", pretty jacked, in his 50s. He gets up and dude, it was like demonic possession staring me right in the face. This dude was like looking at me. He's like, you don't ever tell a man what to do. And he like spits in my face as he's like regaling this triad to me diatribe, excuse me. And I'm just like, what's the most thing I can do to de-escalate the situation? So I kind of just stayed quiet. And I'm 5'11", so I'm like a head shorter than this guy. So I'm just looking up at him a little bit as he's like rising taller and taller as he's looking down at me, spitting in my face. And then I'm like, all right, well then that's it then. I'm like, okay, see you later. And I walked away. Man, I was scared. I was really scared. But the reason I bring it up is there's a lot of people. Yes, you could take pity on them and try to get them to the right place, but they can only be helped if they want help, but you can only help them so far. But the unscrupulousness about it, the people who have like a spirit of, what's it called, David? Pride. What's another word for pride? Of kind of a spirit of entitlement. And I've actually seen that, believe it or not, more from people who were homeless than anybody I've ever met. And I'm not saying that to bash homeless people. I've met a ton of wonderful people who are homeless. But that kind of guy was the worst example of all of them. And I see that spirit of entitlement again and again and again. And especially in the gaming space, it's such a hostile, toxic space to have a discord in.
Well, that cuts to the heart. That cuts to the heart of why homelessness is such a big problem in this state. Not that there aren't people who are genuinely struggling and need assistance, but a lot of the reason why there's so many homeless people in this state is because of people who have that sense of entitlement, who basically live on the fringes of society by choice because they don't want to conform to our culture. And that's when you start to see that what you took for just universal human nature is not always the case. And so there's this very large segment. I'm not going to say it's all of them, but it's a very significant segment of the homeless population, especially in this state, that are just not interested in living by normal social conventions. And so they lead a homeless lifestyle out of that sense of entitlement, out of that sense of resentment that they can't just live whatever way they want and be rewarded for it. And the problem gets compounded when, in this state specifically, because people in this state, whether you're on the left or the right, are raised in an environment that is so focused on empathy, that is so focused on seeing people as blank slates with sort of universal human values, seeing people as basically good. It's so ingrained into people's way of thinking in this state. It's part of our culture here in California, that this sort of idea develops where people just are uncomfortable confronting this problem because it basically goes against everything they were raised to believe about humans. And so instead of facing that and actually dealing with the cognitive dissonance of it all and changing their worldview, they do what most people do when they're confronted with an inconvenient or uncomfortable truth. They just ignore it.
And that just festers the problem and makes it worse.
Yes.
So back on the gaming industry, how do we tie this in, David? How do we tie the spirit of entitlement or the sense of entitlement to the gamers?
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's just like, I feel like it's happening in the gaming industry, but it's also not unique to the gaming industry.
True.
I would call this a failure of neoliberalism. So for those unaware, neoliberalism is a philosophy which places the free market as essentially the highest good. So, obviously, if you're a right winger, you're going to think the free market is a pretty cool thing. But the problem is the problem starts when you remove the things that were supposed to be over the free market, more important than the free market, things like morality, things like spirituality, things like culture, things like national identity. Those things were supposed to be the overarching guiding force that made use of market economics for a higher purpose. But neoliberalism sort of stripped away all those other things and elevated the market as an end unto itself.
Like its own deity.
Essentially, yes.
Hmm.
So that's basically the driving force that leads to problems like this. And while it is happening in the gaming industry, it's also not unique to the gaming industry. It's one of those things like it's just a problem with the ideologies that we've kind of just unthinkingly swallowed. It's become part of our culture because we were brought up in it, and we didn't even see it for what it was till the problem started.
Hmm. Yeah, and that kind of covers the more toxicity kind of aspect of the gaming industry. But I think it's also, speaking of toxicity, something that Colin mentioned in there was some of the Patreon people actually found the account of the hacker, like the actual hacker himself, and they messaged him. Some very unscrupulous, I think, things is what you would describe. Somebody even called him like the F slur and stuff like that. And
Hey, F slur. Every
yeah,
time you say that,
every time
you say that,
I gotta want to say it on
my
live.
heart hurts.
David, I don't want to say it. I don't want to say it on YouTube.
Like you don't have to.
Same thing with the N word. I don't want to say that.
Well, like you don't have to say it.
I don't want to give them the power, David.
I don't. I don't want
the figs. Okay, the figs.
Like I don't even like. I don't want to say it because obviously we're a YouTube channel.
Yes.
And so we're beholden to YouTube's terms of service.
Yep.
So whatever our personal opinion on the subject is, if we use
like at least we're not saying unalived.
Yeah,
if we can say suicide.
If we're using the naughty words, like YouTube's going to ban our account. So that's obviously we're not going to use the naughty words so that we can keep our YouTube account. But like at the same time, I don't want to concede to them any more power.
Correct. Yeah.
Than like is absolutely necessary.
Uh-huh.
I almost feel like saying the N-word, like referring to it as the N-word is already a bridge too far.
A bridge too far.
But it's like I can't even at this point I can't change it because it's one of those things that I was brought up.
Yeah.
I was never brought up saying the word that begins with N and ends with ER and describes black people. I was never brought up saying that. When I was brought up, it was always referred to as the N-word, the N-word, the N-word. So as dumb and stupid as that is, I've internalized it.
Yes.
And I hate that about myself.
And then,
but so when I hear something that I haven't personally internalized, it just makes it even worse for me because I already hate myself for having internalized the concept of the quote unquote N-word. So when I hear people say things like the R word or the F slur, it fills me with such pain.
Well, you know what, David, to make you feel better, I am a genuine, bona fide, certified, clarified retard. So I can say, and according to the rules, according to the social stature of the internet, I can say retard.
You know what you should do?
Should I say it for the culture?
No. This is about the so-called F slur.
Uh-huh.
I think,
What do you think, David?
I think, I think this is sort of, again, this is something I've internalized because of my exposure to it. Is why don't you just say a bundle of sticks?
A British cigarette, is what you're meaning?
And just call
Hand me a
just
bundle of
just
sticks.
say that they call them a bundle of sticks.
Okay, to humor you, I will say that. They called him what they would call cigarettes in Britain. There you go. And I think it's so funny. So I think there's some fishy going on with some of the folks in the Patreon, not like the Discord users, but you don't want to go to their Discord. There's some very interesting people over there that you don't want to be with. Well, I'm not. What I mean by that is they're a bunch of retards over there. Okay, like I've been to the Discord. I think they're fine people, but not on both sides. We'll say anyway. But like the fact that he got hacked during a stream is suspicious.
Yeah.
Like I feel like, and also their Patreon's a very large Patreon, so there's plenty of people in there that could be bad actors. You know what I mean? Paying bad actors, and I mean hackers aren't strangers to paying to get access to things to screw with people. So paying $5 a month or $1 a month to a Patreon to help ruin somebody's life to get us to know when they're going to stream or schedule or to observe them for a week, it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
Also, the guy that sent that text of the bundle of sticks quote to the hacker, Colin said it's not ruled out that he might be involved because of what they know of that account. So there's a lot of investigations going on with a lot of the SecOps people that are helping out the Last Stand crew, as well as what they know from Sony and their connections to Sony. There's a lot going on internally. Another thing to note, this podcast is usually released for free Monday morning, like say today when we're recording, but it would be on Patreon or your Patreon access on Friday. So I usually listen to them, during my shift on Friday, and I'm like, oh yeah, or if I forget, oh, it's free on YouTube or free right now. Sure, I'll just watch it there, whatever. But they released it for free, and they've done this before, but they've released it for free on that Friday for Sony specifically to watch. So they've also contacted Sony before they recorded the episode to see if they had anything to say, and they informed Sony about everything they know, all the stuff they talked about on the podcast, all the stuff they didn't talk on the podcast, they did relay to Sony so that they're aware of the situation. And I just hope something comes about this, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it, is to kind of make it known to people, not just of this scenario, but to kind of think about, like, hey, if there is a password out there you haven't changed in a while, or for years, in fact, it might be a good idea to go change it. Might not help out the vulnerability with Sony with your account at PSN, but also maybe change that email address that you've had on your account for 20 years, 15, 10, 6 years, what have you, to some email address nobody has access to and you don't have online, just in case. It doesn't hurt to be safe.
Yeah, cautious. That's one of those things too. I think Colin actually brought it up too, is email addresses were
meant to be shared.
Yeah, email addresses were never meant to be like passkeys to your private accounts. Email addresses were simply digital mailboxes that people could communicate and collaborate and connect with each other using.
Yeah.
And so I think people in the modern world still kind of think of email addresses as like, oh, it's just my digital mailbox.
Yeah.
And that's what it was intended to be. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, it's kind of grown into this sort of passkey for your private accounts. And it doesn't hurt to start, making sure that you're treating it like that and not like just, oh, it's a mailbox.
And there's also, I think, some people who would make an argument on a different subject here, but they would make an argument that, well, Sony's not as big as Amazon or Apple. or even Microsoft. So we shouldn't expect them to be on top of things like, no, no, bullshit. Like, that is the Sony pony kind of people that would make that argument, because Valve over here, who has a head count of like 500 people under them, and Sony has thousands of people, can track your count way better than anybody. And they have more users than PSN does.
Also, Sony's a massive company. Like
Massive.
PlayStation is just one division
Yeah.
uh of Sony as a whole. Like their history goes back decades. Like they invented the CD for Christ's sake,
And the Blu-ray.
you know? So it's like, yeah, Sony is not a small company. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That argument doesn't
Yeah,
work.
and to see that not just smaller companies, but even larger companies have have the resources, but also could be way more disorganized. Amazon's a great example of that. Microsoft's a great example of that. As horrible as Windows 11 is to use, you can still recover your laptop and your BitLocker code with Microsoft. I've done it, and it sucks when users forget it. But through logging in, through tracking down emails, through sending recovery emails, through their own account and their recovery accounts, you can actually, there's ways to recover stuff by just the user. And Colin does a very interesting suggestion, which it's not really realistic, but I think his suggestion was for Sony, once they're aware of an account from the user that it's been hacked or compromised, just lock the account. Just log in, and if you have to verify with the user that they're the actual user, whether it's through email or the physical mail itself, like a form you would actually send to PlayStation headquarters or security or whoever in San Mateo, whoever you would send this to, just let there be a way to verify the user's information. Because those guys, the PSN, the trophy hunter guys, the top 1 and 2, they've pretty much purchased, you can imagine, nearly every game on PSN since they created their accounts, because they are that obsessed with their ecosystem. Why would Sony want to lose literally their biggest fans?
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like when we're talking about someone's PlayStation Network account being hacked, time is absolutely of the essence, because the hackers are gaining access to it not so they can sit on it. They're going to sell it, or they're going to get it banned, or they're going to do something else with it to damage it beyond repair. And so time is very much of the essence. So like it would make a lot of sense on Sony's part to have their default response to accounts being hacked to just simply lock them out. Because no matter how long it takes for the owner of that account to actually get it back,
who knows what state the account's going to be in, you know?
Yeah, it's like it's imperative that they act as quickly as possible, so that while the original owner is taking whatever steps, however long it takes, they can be assured that when they finally get access to their account again, it's going to be in the state that they left it in, or it's going to have only minimal damage, and it's not going to be banned or sold to somebody else in the black market.
Yeah. And there's another thing too, that kind of ties into this as well. And that is, you pay for PS Plus, right? Which just went up in price. And even if you're a paying subscriber of PlayStation, you still have no way to get access to that account if it's hacked, which is crazy. There's also another thing too. Sony is selling an all digital handheld next generation that will have only digital games. Now, I kind of thought about this when I heard about the thing with Colin. I'm like, well, what if mine got hacked? And I'm like, well, I still have all my physical PS4 games, so I'm kind of okay. But then I thought about it, I'm like, but all my saves are gone. Trophies I don't really care about, but my saves, man, that does kind of sting. Like, I'm not in the PSN ecosystem anymore, really. Like, I have a friend borrowing my PS4 Pro, and he's just using it, and I'm cool with that. I don't really use it anymore. But even having the physical games, I'm like, that doesn't really fix the issue. And even if you have an all digital library, like, I mean, this is going to be new hardware on the market. This is going to be also portable hardware on the market where who knows what kind of vulnerabilities people can pick up from. I mean, just look at the Switch itself when it first came out. This is also Sony's first foray into handheld since they closed the Vita back in 2016. Like, this has been, I think the Vita came out, what was it, 2012, I think? I could be wrong. But anyway, like, I think they ended support in 2016. But anyway, the point is, you have Sony having this new hardware out here, and they have this, still have this huge, the next generation is right around the corner. We talked about this on the pod before. It is coming. And this vulnerability, imagine what the hackers can do with that, with the new people that are going to be coming in for PSN, with because also when you have their account, you have their payment systems. You can easily buy games and stuff like that. Now, you can't gift games, so there's no way hackers can do that. But there are many scrupulous things, I think is the word, that they can do to your account.
You mean unscrupulous?
Is it unscrupulous? My bad. Unscrupulous.
Yeah, scrupulous means done with scruples, and scruples are like moral principles.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. David, thank you for being my etymologist. But yeah, I think that's kind of a thing for them to hopefully think about. Like, hey, you got this new thing on the market. Like, I mean, there's going to be issues you got to deal with that you're going to be busy with dealing with. So why not fix this now so you don't have to fix it later? So there's that too. And then the last thing I wanted to talk to you about, David, is why they target American accounts specifically. Now, this was also mentioned.
I like how this discussion is just recounting what an episode of Sacred Symbols so far.
Well, we not all of it. Come on.
I've been like peppering in my my own particular political agenda here and there.
But like, I don't know. I just think it's really interesting. Okay.
I'm messing with you.
Okay. I was like, what? Hey. This is what we're talking about today, David.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, why can't we talk about magic? Like, let's just talk about that right now.
It's just funny. It's like your whole write-up is basically just all the information that I just watched on the Sacred Symbols podcast. So while I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's just like the structure of it all is like we're basically just recounting their script basically. But it is an interesting topic, so I'm just messing with you. Don't worry.
Right. Yeah, whatever, it don't matter. But yeah, it's just the thing about. I found this really interesting too because, again, this was probably the point of when you were watching when you're like, oh, there's another dog whistle for late stage capitalism. Like late stage capitalism was the first dog whistle, and then it was like the red curtain of Europe.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know? So like
the red tape.
The red tape, sorry, red curtain. that's long gone.
Now you're thinking of the Iron Curtain.
Oh my God, yeah. I'm sorry, I'm a retard. My bad. I forgot.
I mean, it makes sense because the Iron Curtain was the separator between the East and the West.
Yeah.
And the reason why there was a separation between the East and the West was because of communism. And of course, red is the color of communism.
Thank you for justifying my retardation, David. Or my dyslexia. I can't tell whichever. But again, in Europe, the privacy laws that they've had, like we've mentioned on this pod just now, like Europe just wants to dig their fingers into every company and to have control of it. Like that's the reason these laws exist. It's not to protect their people. But it comes with a side effect of kind of letting users get access to things that they might not get in other countries. Like in in Europe, you can ask like a freedom for information request, basically, of any account you have with any company, and they have to give it to you. Now, of course, I'm sure a company's going to take their time. It's not high on their list. They'll probably send it to you in, I don't know, 7 to 8 weeks, whenever it gets in the mail. But legally, they have to give it to you. And from what I'm aware, there are it's much easier to access people's stuff in America versus Europe because of these laws
Yeah,
specifically.
that makes a lot of sense. Speaking of which, though, I did have one. It's not really like a whole separate topic
Mhm.
of discussion, but it is like it's a little thing that I found while doing a little bit of research for this episode. Um, There's just a story that I found kind of fascinating. There's not
Yeah.
really much point to it. It's just kind of interesting. So there's this game, Star Citizen,
Oh yeah. Hmm.
and apparently earlier this year there was a data breach of one of their backup servers.
Oh yeah, I did hear about this.
So
Yeah.
yeah, the interesting thing about it is that apparently the company CIG or whatever they're called, uh, who develops Star Citizen, sat on this information for several weeks before notifying their customers. And this, of course, caused quite a stir on the interwebs among Star Citizen players because this company is based in the UK. And apparently, according to UK law, companies have to notify their customers of a data breach. And when this data breach happened, they sat on the information for several weeks before making it public. And then of course, you can find a statement of what exactly was lost in the data breach, what exactly these people, the attackers, gained access to. Um, but the only people who were getting this statement were people who were actually, uh, were actually going through multiple steps trying to follow up with support from the company to get this information. Like this, they had to actually like go jump through some hoops to get this information from the company. The company wasn't just sending this information out to their
Mm.
customers
Oh
as a
wow.
matter of course. So it was like several weeks they knew about the data breach. They didn't say anything about it. When they finally said something about it, it was very vague. They didn't give much information. And eventually, people got more information about actually what was accessed, but it was only due to them. It was only due to people actually following up with customer support, asking specific questions, and they got this. They finally got the company's statement on what exactly was taken. Um, and it caused quite a stir, like because, like I said, according to what I understand, in the UK, companies are required to notify their customers about data breaches. And according to the company, it seems like this was treated as like non-sensitive information. So it would, the law applies to sensitive information,
Mm.
but it doesn't apply to what could be called non-sensitive information. But then when people actually found out was what exactly was had been breached, it was names, it was addresses, it was emails, it was IP addresses,
Oh my God.
which, as we've seen with the Colin Moriarty having his account hacked, they don't always need the quote unquote sensitive information to hack your stuff. Sometimes all they need is your email address,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
So there was a much stir among the Redditards over this issue.
Yeah. In terms of I mean, Star Citizen is its own kind of crazy topic in itself of what is transpired with that game in its own story. But
Yeah, I
to
guess
know
it's
that
still in development
after however many
since
10 plus
2012,
yeah, since 2012, and
and the
they've
player base has invested $1 billion collectively into it.
yeah, thus far. But here's the thing: I remember hearing that, oh man, we're at 500, we're at $500 million, and I'm like, Well, that's how much that people have given this company throughout these years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's like $1 billion. Do you know how much money that is for any game? 12 years? You're basically telling me that this game has not even been in development for as long as GTA 6, and it has the same budget as GTA 6. What? Reported budget. But anyway. But yeah, I don't know what the thing is with that game, and I think that's a whole. What I want, David, is this. As an outsider of the Star Citizen community, I have no horse in this race. But the fact that it's gone this long and people have still not gotten a product tells me this thing that I hope one day, after all of it has crashed and burned, because I'm sure it will at some point. I feel like Star Citizen is going to come out and melt like a star. It's going to melt the planet. And this whole facade of it's going to be revealed like, oh, the creator of Star Citizen's like in Abu Dhabi right now, just living his best life. He's friends with princes and everything. And he neglected the game. I can't wait for the expose, is what I'm saying, about this. Like, there's going to be a book written about the history of this game and like the unscrupulous things the people who've developed it have done. Because, dude, and this was 10 plus years ago, but you had cutscenes and stuff with Henry Cavill. Mark Hamill was in the game at one point. Brian Cox, I believe, as well. Like, they had celebrities in there. And again, this game is still in development. What the heck? Now, of course, I'm an outsider. I'm sure it's mostly a complete game, but who knows? They have early access on there for a reason. And I think it's because people just keep giving them money. How stupid are people? What's going on? Maybe it's the princes that the creator is afraid of.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I guess this just goes back to this kind of thing, it's like stuff like this happens just like with the PSN thing.
Yeah.
Because people are dumb and just continue to give these companies money.
Yeah.
And because it all goes back to these things that just like these assumptions that we operate by that we don't really question or even think about or even know are there because they're just kind of ingrained into who we are from birth, But the world is changing in a way that it's imperative now more than ever that people kind of, I don't want to use the term wake up because it's like, it's so overused, but that's kind of what people have to do at this point is like these companies they're not doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They're going to make money however they can, and it's up to us to kind of keep them in check.
There's a shirt I have bought from the old Tech Syndicate on YouTube. They had some shirts. They had the tech podcast I listened to for years. They're gone now, basically. But they had a shirt, David, and it said, Google doesn't care about you. And it's the truth. But I kind of look at that shirt in my closet from time to time, and I see it, and I think about it, and I'm like, no, they actually do care about me. They care what I eat, what I go see, what I watch, what I play, where I'm at.
They care a lot.
A lot about what I'm doing.
It's like that Faith No More song, We Care a Lot.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, you've never heard that song?
No, I don't.
Oh, that's a banger. You'll have to listen to that.
Faith No More?
Faith No More. We Care a Lot.
We care a lot. Is it like Michael Jackson's They Don't Really Care About Us?
I'll show it to you.
Yeah, you'll have to show it to me after the pod, yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of which, I honestly don't have much else. I just think that I know for the next year and a half, Colin's going to be ranting every episode about, because they don't do this, like whenever they talk about Sony's financials or whatever. But I think it's interesting. Like, I think the biggest thing takeaway from me is you have all these other companies that, in quotes, care, in quotes, about you, right? And they're actually willing to help you out because they want your money. But Sony's willing to just let this go by and kind of lose customers and their money. I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway for me is the lack of care. Honestly.
Yeah. I don't know enough about this topic to really educate like
Mm.
speak on it, but I'm kind of speculating here, so I won't like go too deeply into it. But this is kind of like a
Where
sneaking
your brain
a
goes.
sneaking suspicion that I'm starting to have is that this might be an issue with Japanese companies, because it's like Nintendo is kind of similar in a way, not in the whole
Mm.
like letting your data be breached, but
Yeah.
in making decisions where it just really seems like they don't care about the customer, and they just kind of like, even when it causes severe backlash, they just like whatever, and they just continue to do the same thing, because it's part of their business model or whatever. So, and it just, yeah, for whatever reason, this whole like Sony's sort of attitude to this ongoing problem of security vulnerabilities in PSN is like very kind of reminds me of just Nintendo's sort of anti-consumer attitude that they
Mm.
seem to have.
And then they've had for, God, forever at this point. I mean, Nintendo's, like you said, the attitude that they have. And that's one thing that I kind of hate Nintendo. Not hate, hate's a strong word, but I greatly dislike how Nintendo operates them or conducts themselves, I should say, because they, again, just don't seem to give a crap about anyone. Like, they know that they have you by the 10, like, they got you, David. They got you with the nostalgia. They can do whatever they want because they're successful. I mean, look at back at the Wii U era. I remember hearing words and articles and podcasts, people speculating, are we going to see Mario and Link on another console at some point? Will that even happen because of how much of a failure this company is? And even in their failure, they still had a very prideful sense about them of, yeah, we're still the best. We still got Mario. We still got Zelda. The next Zelda's being made. It's taken 7 years, but it'll be on the Wii U. Oh, it'll also be on the Switch too, but the
Hmm.
Switch as well, But it's like, and it's not to say these companies don't make good products. They do. They make actually really good ecosystems, good games. They make what they think you want, and people don't really know what they want.
Yeah, like I said,
Like Steve Jobs said,
yep.
right?
Like I
People don't know what
said,
they want.
like I said before, Sony is like an iconic company with a storied history. Like you look at gaming specifically, just the history of PlayStation,
Hmm.
they contributed a lot to uh,
Yeah.
gaming over the decades. And then even before gaming, they were making groundbreaking inventions that, made our lives better.
Yeah. The
Things like
Walkman.
the Walkman, the CD, the Blu-ray.
Hmm.
Like it's crazy how influential Sony has been in just the modern lives of people.
Hmm.
Um, so it's not to say that they're a bad company necessarily, but there
Yeah.
is this attitude that they
Hmm.
seem to have where, like, if it doesn't, it's almost like it doesn't really affect their bottom line all that much. So they're not going to bother about it.
And even like companies I greatly like Valve. Like, there's not many issues I have with them, honestly. I'm sure there are that people have with them or have had bad experiences. Like, everybody's had some bad experience at some company, right? Whether you work there, you're a customer, whoever. But I feel like the lack of care for people who are like, hey, I want to give you money for what I'm doing because I'm a fan of you, and just the complete lack of care of even that.
And that's a thing that goes back to culture is a lot of big American companies, like even the ones who are really uncaring,
Mm.
um, like do better for the customer simply because they have this ideal, and it's like it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's just an American cultural thing that people just don't even really think about. Not that Microsoft or Apple are particularly virtuous, but I feel like they tend to do right by the customer more often than companies like Nintendo and Sony do, simply because they have that shared American assumption that customer service is important. And if you think about the history of America, America has always been seen as kind of the land of opportunity, in quotes. It was a place where entrepreneurs could come and through, basically innovation, persistence, hard work, could go from, working just a regular job to starting, a company worth billions of dollars. And like, as mind blowing as it might seem to think about, like Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, they all started in someone's garage, basically. Um, and it's sort of that American ethos of I'm going to do what it takes to build myself up. And usually, when you're a small, struggling one man operation, what it takes to keep yourself going and to distinguish yourself in the field is excellent customer service. And so, because of that sort of like, I'm not going to say it's uniquely American, but it's definitely more present in American businesses, I would say,
Yeah.
as more present in how Americans conduct themselves in a business setting. Because of that, you seem to see, like, for example, another story that I was researching, like Microsoft for years had been making use of Chinese software engineers, even for sensitive stuff. Like, we don't know exactly what these Chinese software engineers were working on, but there's the possibility that they were working on like sensitive, like Department of Defense stuff.
Oh.
And basically, they were using these Chinese software engineers and they were monitoring them with people they called digital escorts. Um, like, and essentially, like, these people were managers over them who were Americans who were monitoring their work remotely.
Huh.
So they called them digital escorts. But the problem is these digital escorts, these managers, didn't actually have the technical know-how to really know if what these Chinese software engineers was doing was above board or not.
Oh man.
So they were basically just having to kind of like trust that these guys were doing the right thing. And so when this all came to light last year, it caused quite the stir, like to the point where even the US government was putting out statements about it. And Microsoft has, like, since then, stopped using Chinese software engineers for critical infrastructure stuff.
That's crazy. The one thing I want to kind of pick at what you were saying there, David, is the thing about the customer, a good customer service. It makes me think of that term, the customer's always right.
Yeah,
I
that's a
don't,
very American thing,
I don't,
even if it's
yeah.
not a true
If
statement.
it's not a true statement, exactly, that's what I was going with. It's not a true statement. The customer is not always right. I think you could probably say like, oh, the customer is prioritized. Obviously, they're the customer, but they're not always right. That is an incorrect statement. I can promise you that. Anybody who's ever worked in any job, that's the truth. But it's like through good customer support and care, I think is what kind of kept a lot of companies afloat, like especially restaurants, especially with the food industry. I mean, you just look at that and it's all about good customer service.
Yeah, and it's one of those things like the reason why people even said something as stupid as the customer's always right is because that statement came from just an assumption that was built into how the person had been raised, how they had been brought up in the world.
It's the culture thing.
It's the culture.
Yeah.
So they had this assumption that they never really thought about, never really looked critically at, probably wasn't even really aware that it existed to any particular degree, but that invisible assumption in their life is what inspired the statement, the customer is always right. And of course, because it's an untested assumption, because it's an assumption that's not critically thought about, the result of that assumption, the ideas that come from those assumptions are also not critically looked at in the same way. So that's why the phrase, the customer is always right, has been bandied about by so many people, even though it's clearly wrong on so many levels.
Hmm. This we talked about deconstructionism on our theological podcast, and it kind of makes me think of what it took to deconstruct the culture to get it to this point. You know what I mean? I would say the films of like the 70s, for example, were deconstructions of the American dream, the American look of that culture, how people would live, the 50s in general. I feel like when you look, that's the example I would give is the films of the 70s are kind of the deconstruction in the culture of what the culture was promised
Or at least
or
it's the
critiquing. Yeah,
beginning of that
the
process.
beginning. So it's like when you look at culture and you see what's being taken from it or taken from what you're told growing up or what you're taught, and you see that deconstructed in a piece of media or what have you. It could be an article, could be a show, movie, something somebody else tells you, whatever. But how did the culture get from that? Like the customer is always right with that culture and without it. Because when you take away that culture of the moral like foundations you're kind of talking about, or the things that surrounded that culture that made it good, what deconstructed that to make it, what do you replace it with is kind of what I'm getting to.
Yeah,
And is it replaced with anything right now? Does it mean anything anymore without those things?
I think kind of the one of the big root issues which has led to a lot of this stuff, um, which has also led to what I talked about earlier, the neoliberalism as a guiding force in the economics and the politics of this country for basically a century at this point.
Hmm.
Um, that all kind of traces back to the abandoning of Christianity in the West.
Hmm.
Because, I mean, people who aren't believers don't really like to hear this, and they'll argue against it all day, but most of their arguments are bunk. But Christianity is really kind of the moral
Mhm.
and cultural foundation of the West in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of cultural things in Europe and America that aren't directly related to Christianity, but as far as the morality of Western nations, definitely the central element there is Christianity. And when you had the drive for secularization that kind of started in the early 1900s, things that systems and ideas that developed out of Christian moral thinking and worked when they were subject to Christian moral thinking sort of became gods and religions unto themselves. Liberalism is a good example of this. The idea that people are fundamentally, that all men are created equal, that all men have certain rights, that governments exist to protect the rights of the people. Those assumptions behind liberalism all stem from Christian moral thinking. And liberalism works fantastically when it's subject to Christian moral thinking. That is, Christian people or people who, at the very least, operate according to Christian morality. Liberalism works very well. When you become when liberalism becomes sort of a god unto itself, or a philosophy, or it becomes the highest philosophy
Mm.
in your hierarchy, then that's where the problems come in. And so that's what led to the philosophy of neoliberalism, which sort of took the ideas of the liberalism as separated from the Christian moral thought that produced it, applied to an applied in an economic sense, taking the ideals of the free market, of the individual's liberty to conduct business in the way they see fit, to try and make money in the way they see fit,
Mm.
but divorced completely from any idea of national identity or of Christian moral thought. And it turned into this sort of thing that spawned basically the globalism that we see today,
Mm.
is the direct result of neoliberalism.
I think you're also kind of seeing, like, when the world gets bigger, whether it be through online and viewing things through the internet, or what you see on the news, for example, TV, when the world gets bigger, the focus is kind of lost. That we were actually talking about this, I think, when we had Thad on the first Theo Bros episode, talking about Bethel and that kind of situation and people who are leaving that church, and encouraging, if you are part of a big church, to find local, like make churches local again, in quotes. I think this applies the same thing. I mean, we've been talking about Last Stand Media, Patreon, small creators, big creators. This kind of gives people a little look at local communities. And this is why I think local communities are really important, because it kind of narrows things down. Like, say, if you go to your local church, and I'm not comparing like an online community you're part of to a church, but the idea is local community. The idea is to invest locally into those around you, because it's where you live. It's where you'll raise your kids, or where you are raising your kids. I think you get a little bit of the world without globalism, David, when you're a part of a small community on the internet, or a smaller part of a small community. You find your place or your niche, and you find the connection people are looking for. Without the morale, what would you call it? In the hierarchy of liberalism, when it's kind of loses its foundation of all of that, it kind of just drifts away. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So let's end it here, but let me ask you this, David. How do you think right now, with the world there it's at, whether it be with globalism or neoliberalism or the loss of liberalism's foundation, how do people find that again in a world that is so vastly different and changed? What do they follow? Where do we go?
Well, I mean,
Do we go back to Jesus?
yeah, I mean, that's the big thing, is for, especially for people in the West, is like, give Jesus a second look, man. If you've written off church, if you've written off the Bible, if you've written off Christianity in the past, give it a second look, man, because I mean, ultimately, as Christians, we want you to be saved. We believe that there's no real fulfillment outside of being in Christ, you know? But if I'm going to look at it from a secular perspective,
Hmm.
at the very least, uh, you, we as humans need something to ground ourselves in. And like it or not, Christianity is the moral foundation of the West.
Mm-hmm.
So reconnect yourself somehow to the West's moral foundation if you want to have any hope of having a purposeful or stable existence. Because, yeah, like you said, without a foundation, everything just kind of goes off the rails.
It's also missing the original purpose. Like the American dream was something great, right? And like through the example I have with the 70 films of the 70s, that deconstruction began. When the foundation is gone, what's that American dream? It kind of dissolves.
Yeah.
So find the foundation again. It's so weird. We're talking about a podcaster that got his account hacked to neoliberalism and Christianity. I mean, go figure.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not what I had planned, but this is cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's not what I had planned either, but I mean, for like that's where all roads lead, man.
Yeah.
Everything goes back to Christ. Like, I mean, people who aren't believers, they don't like to hear things like that, but I mean, it's the truth. I don't want to say I'm smarter than anybody else because I'm certainly not. But
Yeah. Neither am I.
like I've been a seeker of truth my entire life, and I've been a natural skeptic my entire life, and I can't find anything on this earth that's more fulfilling than following Jesus. And I've looked for a long, long time. I've tried a lot of different things. And yeah, I've always come back to Christ no matter what. So, and I mean, like it or not, like Christianity is inseparable from Western culture and morality. So even if you can't stomach yourself, even if you can't bring yourself to have faith in him, like without at least the acknowledgement of Christian morality being essential the to the way we live here in America, like you're just gonna be drifting, man.
Are all those who wander lost, David?
Who knows?
And I think on that we'll go ahead and end it there. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to yet another episode of the Snarp Fangle podcast. We'll see you next week with a new entry into the Theo Bros podcast. I think this is kind of a nice little preamble into that. And we will see you later. But remember, when you're in the Last Stand Media Discord and the user Randy's whore wife messages you and says, hey, you want to know what motel I'm at? Just remember to don't click on the message. Just block them. And remember to bless your face and Snarp Fangle on.
Bye-bye now.